What is up, everyone? Crunchy Frog back here with another gameplay commentary for you. This time we'll be using some Vanguard footage as I wrap up playing the game before Modern Warfare 2 drops here in a few months. So if you're watching this after Modern Warfare 2 has come out, I apologize for the Vanguard gameplay. It's all I have right now. But anyways, I wanted to kind of sit down and make a little more of a less formal commentary than usual. I don't have a complete script typed out or anything for this one, but basically it came up in conversation today. My friend and I had a kind of small argument about Call of Duty and whether it's going to innovate enough in the next iteration, and how games have felt too similar across the decades. The COD has been releasing sequels and new installments, and it kind of harkens back to kind of a debate that I've had going for a while now in terms of if you're playing the same franchise, at which point is a certain amount of innovation too much innovation? At which point does it not become the series anymore? At which point do you just kind of have to be happy with the fact that if you're playing a Call of Duty, it's gonna feel like a Call of Duty? So without further ado, if you like this kind of content, if you enjoy these kind of sit-down commentary opinion pieces, definitely check out the rest in the playlist linked below. And if you really enjoy my content, definitely feel free to drop a like and subscribe. So without further ado, we'll get right into it. I just want to start off by saying I am personally of the camp of, when game franchises release sequel after sequel, or in COD's case, just a new entry every single year, but within the same franchise, we constantly get complaints and anger and kind of trolling on social media in terms of, oh, this game's the same game. I've been playing the same COD for 15 years. I've been playing the same Pokemon game since 1998. The complaints go on and on and on. And you see it every time a new, game is announced or released. The moment that first trailer drops, oh, this looks exactly like Call of Duty. And it's kind of pervasive with a lot of different game franchises. But to me, that's kind of the point, right? There's a fine line between innovation year over year and a drastic shakeup. If a game changes too much and it innovates a lot to please those people that are complaining on Twitter, at which point does it just become a completely different series? A game can only innovate on itself so much while retaining the same core features and feel and gameplay that made everyone love that series to begin with, right? Games have a certain recognizable characteristic or feel or gameplay flow or gameplay systems that noticeably make that series. For example, Call of Duty, right? You expect the game or the gunplay to feel tight and frenetic and kind of a twitch shooter. You expect that same core Call of Duty gameplay and gunfights from any time you boot up a Call of Duty game. If you booted it up and suddenly it had similar systems to Halo, or the guns controlled exactly like Battlefield, you wouldn't really know how to how to handle yourself, right? Because it doesn't feel like Call of Duty. If you bought, for example, a Battlefield game and all of a sudden all the guns had zero recoil, there were no vehicles in the maps, the maps were, the size of a two-bedroom apartment, you would lose your mind, right? Yes, it was innovation. It drastically changed from the, previous Battlefield game, but it's no longer Battlefield. Right? If Forza is suddenly a third-person action RPG with looter shooter mechanics, it's no longer Forza, right? Yes, there's innovation there, but you've strayed too far from the path. And at a certain point, if you want a whole lot of innovation or a lot of game systems and core mechanics to change, what you're really looking for is a spin-off series or just a completely brand new IP in and of itself, right? There's no reason why fans should play a Call of Duty title every year and expect it to feel like a drastic brand new game every single year, right? You're buying Call of Duty. If you watch a movie series, for example, if you turn on, they made a new Saw 19 at this point. I think they're up to, God knows how many Saw movies. But if you were to go to the movie theater to see a brand new Saw movie, and suddenly it's just a lighthearted, like, comedy sitcom sort of thing, you would lose your mind, right? Because you go to a movie or pick up a game expecting to play that series. If you're getting a new game or a new IP from a new publisher or anything like that, obviously your palette is clean, so to speak. But if you're buying a Call of Duty game, you expect a Call of Duty game. And one of the main issues is publishers hear the criticism of this is the same game every year. So they try to innovate, but at the same time, if they have big innovations or big gameplay ideas, they're hesitant to create those new IPs or spin-offs because they know it won't sell as well. So sometimes we have, rough spots where they did try to innovate, maybe a little too much. They lost the plot, so to speak, and lost what made that franchise great. And fans hated it, right? The publishers did exactly what the fans wanted. They created almost a new gaming experience, but with the same name tacked onto it, and it felt different than previous games, and fans hated it. Some examples of that are Battlefield 2042, right? That's fresh in our minds right now. It was a horrible release last winter. Everyone still kind of is mad about it. And a lot of the flack that it got on release was because they changed up the class system, right? Now, obviously, there was a lot of things wrong with that game, and that was just the tip of the iceberg when it came to why people hated it. But definitely one of the biggest complaints was that they took a core fundamental piece of Battlefield, and in their eyes, they tried to innovate on it, right? They tried changing it to operators with hero shooter type mechanics, and they thought probably along the development cycle, they thought, oh, well, fans will love this. This is innovation. They've been tired of playing quote unquote the same Battlefield for years and years, so they tried something new. But in this case, it went a little too far, and suddenly it didn't feel like Battlefield anymore. There were no medics running around. There were no engineers running around. And it changed up a lot of the core fundamentals of the Battlefield game and almost made it feel like a completely different franchise. And people hated it. So people were asking for, oh, this is the same Battlefield. It feels the same Battlefield for the last 10 years. But the moment that they changed up appreciably enough for it to be a brand new mechanic or totally rewriting the rulebook in terms of what's happening, fans hated it. Another example would be the new Assassin's Creed games, right? Whenever they branched off Assassin's Creed Origins, they focused now more to a very, very open world RPG mechanic. Kind of the apex of which was Assassin's Creed Odyssey, right? That game was almost full blown RPG, right? The assassins themselves were hardly ever, if ever, mentioned. I don't believe at all. Obviously, they weren't really a thing at that point. The hidden ones hadn't even been established. At least in Origins and in Valhalla, they were mentioned to some degree. But Odyssey was a game that was completely just a not looter shooter, I guess looter stabber, if that's the word you want to use, RPG. It featured extensive loot system, extensive skill points and RPG elements. You could, choose your dialogue and have branching dialogue and mission structures and everything. It went completely off the rails of a normal Assassin's Creed game, which is what some people were asking for, right? After 10 straight years, I think it was, or 9 straight years of a new Assassin's Creed every single year, people got sick of it. And they said, I'm tired of the same game every single year. If you were around Twitter around 2015, 2016, believe me, you know what I'm talking about. If you saw the sales numbers for Assassin's Creed Syndicate, you know what I'm talking about. And so they did something drastically different, and it fractured the community. Granted, people like myself definitely love the new 3 games. I loved Origins. I played the hell out of Odyssey, and I beat the ever-loving piss out of Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Over 200 hours in that game alone. So I definitely enjoy them, but you see a very fractured community in that a lot of people are now complaining and crying, can we please go back to the Assassin's Creed formula? Can we please go back to the old Assassin's Creed? And part of that reason was because Ubisoft did not want to make a new IP. They didn't have the balls, so to speak, or they didn't have the capital to put on the line to change something like Odyssey into a completely different IP. In my opinion, Assassin's Creed Odyssey especially, but to a lesser extent, Origins and Valhalla should have been their own series. Just a historical RPG where you get to loot weapons off the ground. You meet historical figures, wherever the case may be. But they were so detached from the games, they should have either been complete spin offs that were not part of the main series or an entirely new IP. But unfortunately, Ubisoft knew that setting a new IP called Odyssey or whatever and dropping the Assassin's Creed name would not have sold as well. And thus, they, vastly revamped the formula. Some people loved it. Other people, core fundamentalists of the franchise, hated it. And now they want to go back to days of old. So they want to step back that innovation. There's also been, since this is a COD focused video, there have also been multiple COD changes over the years that people absolutely hated. Ways that devs try to innovate year after year and they just fall flat. And I think these are often forgot whenever people say things like, this is the same COD every year. There is innovations, but a lot of the time people didn't like it because it made COD feel less like COD, and thus the next year it's completely dropped. So things like the massive maps in Ghosts, right? They were trying for a more, you could tell they wanted a bigger, 12v12 or 14 versus 14 matches, but you could tell they were going for a little bit different thing to shake up the game, maybe make it feel more like Battlefield in certain certain ways, and people hated it. People hate what's that? I think it's not Stonehenge, but something like that. It's the mossy like castle map in Call of Duty Ghosts. I'm drawing a blank right now, but people hated that map. They said it was way too big. It was just horrible to play on. People also hate the new prestige system, right? Call of Duty devs tried to go in there, mix it up, change the prestige system to kind of fit in better with a battle pass 6-season layout, and people hate it. That is objectively innovation on the formula. You're not just prestiging 10 times for the 20th year in a row. And people hate it, right? Because it doesn't feel like Call of Duty. They want it to go back to the prestige system. The division system is arguably the biggest example of this. Sledgehammer really tried to innovate on the core fundamentals of how you create your class and how you go into battle with a division system. And on launch day, it fundamentally changed how COD played, right? How your perks were assigned, and people hated it. But that is a textbook example of a great way to innovate a game and make it feel different, right? World War II on launch felt drastically different than other Call of Duties because of the division system. However, a large part of the community, myself included, then kicked back and said, well, now this doesn't feel like Call of Duty. I want my perks back. Why do I have to run a submachine class just to use a suppressor? Etc., etc., right? So the devs tried something, they tried innovating, and everybody hated it. So then whenever the next year rolled back around and they incorporated, they kind of changed it back to normal with, I do believe that would have been Black Ops 4. People went back to this is just another Call of Duty again. And the same could be said for the drastic health and manual healing and hero shooter elements that Black Ops 4 brought, right? They tried innovating, they tried changing, but at the end of the day, it didn't feel like Call of Duty to a lot of people, and those people hated it. So you got to walk that fine line there, and really between we're innovating, but we can't change it enough so that it still feels like COD. So I think, finally the last example of that is Halo 5 gradually started, was the game where 343 tried to incorporate a lot of what people called COD-like elements, like the ADS and other things like that, and people hated it, right? They tried innovating and people hated it. So I think it definitely works in some cases, but overall, every time I hear somebody say, I'm playing the same game for 10 years, I just want to tell them, yes, you bought a Call of Duty game, you bought a Assassin's Creed game, a Battlefield game, Halo, whatever the case may be. If you're purchasing a game in a franchise,
password's just
like
password.
I said earlier, watching a movie in a franchise, you expect a certain level, a certain feel from that property each time you play it. And so, yes, Pokemon games are going to feel the same every year. Why? Because they're all games about battling little monsters that you put into, tiny little capsules. If the COD feels the same as it always had, that's because the COD engine and the gun mechanics and the shooting and the maps and everything like that are meant to play COD. And so eventually we just get stuck in a cycle of unhappiness where, the community yells and yells and yells that the devs haven't changed enough. And then whenever they do change things that fundamentally shake up the feel of the game, they start screaming again with, whoa, 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 you changed way too much. I hate this. So, just kind of my piece on the matter, my take on it, in terms of, you know, should a game innovate enough on itself year over year? Or if you're playing a series, how should it feel year after year? So I want to thank everybody for sticking around this far. Leave your thoughts below in the comments, of how you feel about this. Do you feel that games like Call of Duty and Pokemon and Assassin's Creed and other long-running franchises, do you think they innovate enough year over year? Or do you believe that if they start to innovate too much, they'll lose the core fundamentals of the game franchise themselves and start feeling like an entirely different entity? Other than that, guys, I want to thank everyone for joining. If you've stuck around this far, make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more content like this. And you all have a great night.